think the important thing that people have to realise is that when you're training women, it's different than training men. And from a physiological point of view, when you train women, technically, the technique has to be a lot more precise. And for a woman to get an uchimata perfectly executed, she has to get it absolutely central. Everything has to be working in the same direction, in the right direction, and she needs to get elevation, she needs control with the hands, the head has to be going in the right direction. Everything has to be working more perfectly than if a man's doing it. Now, the reason that I'm saying that is because if a man does it, for example, a man, because he has more of a power base, more of a physical power base, then they can get away with not being quite as technically accurate as the ladies need to be. And so, you know, if it's slightly off and it's not quite central, if the support leg's not quite as deep as it should be, you know, that little bit of extra power enables them to finish the technique off. And that is why a man can get away with not being as technically correct as a lady. Whereas what happens is a lady will collapse under the mass of the technique that's not technically correct. What this came from really is that an observation from a lot of techniques that we've seen being executed over the last few Grand Prix, Grand Slams, World Championships and things like that. We've seen a lot of collapse techniques by the ladies. And so this rash statement that I've made that it has to be more technically correct, you know, I had a few people saying, why? So, you know, I'm saying that it has to be more technically correct in order to execute it. But the important thing about these competitions is that the referees have given the same time indications for the ladies in order to execute their attacks as they have the men. And I feel that it should be different, a little bit different. It's not a big time difference, but for example, the gripping rules now state that we need positive kumakata. Positive kumakata as opposed to batting off our opponent's grips in a negative manner, which is immediately awarded shidos. Positive kumakata is where you grip either lapel, sleeve lapel, round the back, but it's with a positive spin on it so that you attack immediately afterwards. But the difference is that a lady has to be very positive with the kumakata and needs just that extra little bit of time in order to settle so that she can attack. And if you put the same time indicator on a lady that it has to be bang bang and attack, then what happens is if they don't grip up and they don't have their power aspect correct, and also they don't have their line for attack correct, all right, then it will fail and it will collapse. So we need to give them, the referees need to be aware that maybe they need to give them a little bit more time to set up their line of attack, set up their technique, just that little bit more, and I think that it will save a lot more collapsed attacks. Now, this little bit of time in order to set techniques up is not just for the women, it's for the men as well. I think that because this new rule is so absolute now, and that, you know, that we know that we have to get the grip, we have to set up the line, then we have to attack. We know that if we're holding the same side, that it has to be an immediate attack. So it kind of encourages the fighters to catch, whether it's cross grip and then back to traditional grip, and then set up. It gives them a bit more time to set up their line of attack before they come in. And I think that that's a good thing. We need that for men and women, but we need to be aware that there is a slight differential in time needed for the woman in order to get it right. The other point is that from a coaching perspective, when we're coaching women, we have to make sure, and this is where the bands come in, we have to make sure that the technique for ladies is absolutely precise. It's got to be precise. And I did a couple of articles, I'm talking about 5-6 years ago now, regarding women's judo and the importance of having technical excellence, and the importance of it being more important for the women actually to have absolute pure technical excellence before they step out onto the competition arena. So I'm going to emphasize that again. It is absolutely imperative that we really concentrate on getting it technically correct. Otherwise, we're going to see a lot more collapse techniques. And as we've seen in the last 4 or 5 Grand Prix Grand Slams, loads of Shidos. So many Shidos given for the women, knowing that they're going to get a Shido if they don't attack immediately. They attack and it goes to ground. And if they're collapsing, for example, and their body position isn't in the right place and the person falls on top of them, this is generally what's happening. And so they're incurring neck injuries, shoulder injuries and knee injuries because of this. So I think that getting the technique very, very specifically technically correct is absolutely imperative. And that's where the bands have come in, and that they're so useful, because for a start off, the ladies will be able to break down the techniques into minute detail. They'll be able to have a look at body positioning and to acquire the shape of the technique, which is really, really important in order to make the technique work. And I think that recognizing what is a good shape and a bad shape, what is a good technique from a physiological point of view and what isn't, is very important for the coaches that are coaching ladies. One of the biggest problems is, if, say for example, if we were using gymnastics or trampolining as a prime example, if the student, whether it's female, male, children, if they don't get the technique technically correct, if the head goes off at a tangent, for example, if somebody's throwing a back somersault or a front somersault, if the head is not in position, if the shape of the technique is not correct, then the somersault normally follows the trajectory of the head. So it can be very, very dangerous. That's when they end up in the springs. So, you know, head positioning and body positioning is so important in gymnastics, and it has to be exactly in the right place. And it's no different for judo. It has to all work together. The body position has to be in the right place. The head position has to be in the right place. The kazushi, the pulling action that starts the technique, becomes so important, because that kazushi actually starts the rotation and the movement into the technique. Without that pulling action, without that kazushi, and that's why we're so strong on this kazushi revolution, right? Because if they don't start with that pulling action, and the head's not going in the same direction, and the direction hand's not going in the same direction at the same time, then it all fails. It will collapse, and then we get more injuries. It was really important for me as far as the children were concerned, because the children they didn't have very good ukis, so they got pulled out of line, off balance, if they started to rotate round, which meant that direction hands, kazushi hands and things like that were in the wrong positions. So it was really good with the bands to get the direction hand and the kazushi hands working in the right direction, but also to get the feet moving 180 degrees completely all the way around, which it enables then the body to do a full rotation. So this was really important, and to put them in the right position. And I think it's exactly the same. Women's judo, it's imperative that they use these bands in order to get the right position with the hands, to get the right body position, and to get the right feet position. And it needs to be going in the right direction at the same time. And this is the key. If it goes in the right direction at the wrong time, if you've got your feet working without your hands, or your hands working without your feet, your head not going in, at the same time, then your body won't go at the same time, and then it's very difficult to get in the right position in order to throw. So what I'm going to do is just take you through a series of exercises just to demonstrate what I mean by having to be very, very precise with the technical precision of all technique, but especially when we're dealing with ladies. I want to really show what the difference is between ladies and men's power base while we're doing it. So first thing is, about the bands anyway, it's really important that we get the correct hand movements while we're doing the whole process. And what I'm going to do is just build it up, and during the actual exercises I'll demonstrate to you why the women's technique would probably fail, or probably does fail, and how we can correct it, and how these can actually help, but also how, with the aid of a good coach, to look out for certain points. So we've already said that the kazushi, really important to get the kazushi right, and that all things have to be working together. So we need to get the hands, we need to get the head working together, and in order to get this kind of rotation and to get the legs working together as well, it's very important that we build it up into bits. So what I first of all got to do is just get the pulling action, and it's just a general pulling action up to around about the ears if we can, and just both hands together. And after that, then we're going to get the legs and the hands working together. And it's really important that we get the hands and the legs and the body starting to work together. So we're then going to just turn it to the side, and we're going to get the kazushi hand going first. And we've imagined that we've got this wristwatch here, and this is where the bottom part of the actual uchikomi bands here, on the jacket here, this seam enables us to grip as if we're gripping the bottom of the jacket, so that when the hand actually does turn, the wrist turns, and it's in the correct position, then the elbow's in the correct position, and also with the head following here, and then we get the legs moving and bending at the same time. So really important, as I pointed out, to get those working together. So that's just part of the process, is to get the head going, get the hand going, and getting the legs going, but the body's still not rotating yet. And this is one of the key points now as to what goes wrong. So what we can do now is hold the end. This is why we've got this seam at the end here, which actually emulates the lapel. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get the lapel hand, or the direction hand, going in at the same time. But, and this is the important thing, often what happens is, if we leave this direction hand behind here, this is what starts to pull us off balance. If we've done a full rotation and this direction hand is behind, this is what's pulling us off balance. And this is one of the main reasons that techniques collapse. So in order to stop that, and that's the beauty of these, is that we must make sure that this direction hand here comes to this 90-degree position here, ready to push forwards. If it's behind, then we have to pull. Now, it's a bold statement for me to state that if this hand gets caught behind, all right, then the technique will collapse. Men, because they've got a more solid base foundation, they can get away with it a lot of the time from pulling from this position. And so even if the technique is not technically absolutely correct, then they just put that little bit of extra power in. They pull it in before they push. What we have to do with ladies and kids as well is ensure that this hand, this direction hand, is all the time ready in the position here, ready to push. So that then, once we've built up this action here with the direction hand and the kazushi hand here, then from here we start to get into the position ready to push. So then we have the full rotation here. If this isn't working, that's when it will collapse. So it's so important that we get a situation that we build so that this hand here, the kazushi hand, the head and the body and the feet all go in the same direction at the same time. This hand cannot be left behind. Otherwise, children and ladies in general will collapse. And that's what happens a lot of the time with ladies' techniques.